Live from WRAL News Headquarters in Raleigh, your number one source for local news. WRAL News, coverage you can count on.
Now on Fox 50, polls are now open across North Carolina as you decide who will lead our country, state, and communities. We have team coverage on the big races as people line up to cast their ballots.
And former President Trump and Vice President Harris make their final pitches to the American people, how they hit home their key issues and urge supporters to make it to the polls. And if you're headed to the polls this morning, you may run into some fog. It is beginning to lift slightly as we can now see a few buildings here at North Hills. I'll show you when it moves out completely.
And one of the most costly strikes in U.S. history has come to an end. The decision Boeing workers made to stop the strike and head back to work. A lot of coverage happening, grammar, goodness, this morning here on WRAL News and Fox 50. Thank you so much for joining us here on Election Day. I'm Chris Lovingood.
And I'm Michelle McConaughey. Yeah, there's a lot to get to. But first, we have to talk about the fog going on behind us here at Diggs Park. You still can't make out any of the buildings there. But yeah. WRAL is your election source for everything that you need to know. Yeah, we've got our team of reporters right there that are standing by as the doors are open to the polls. But before we check in with them, got to get to Elizabeth right now for that first look at the Election Day forecast. Dense fog advisory in effect for another hour. It's possible that the Weather Service would extend it in a few places. It's still pretty foggy around the Triangle, but some of the areas are beginning to see that fog lift a little bit. But it is the entire viewing area again until around 9 a.m. This is a look at RDU, and you can see Terminal 2 now. We couldn't see it earlier, so starting to see at least a little bit of improvement out there. 60 is our temperature. Our dew point is 58, so we have a fairly saturated air mass this morning. We will see the fog lifting before lunchtime, partly cloudy through the afternoon, and a very warm day. That 80 degrees for this afternoon is close to a record high for it today. We're tracking Rafael as well. It has 60 mile per hour wind. Later today, it's likely to become a Category 1 hurricane moving across Cuba and then here into the Gulf of Mexico. And then the question is, will it just fizzle out here, or is it going to end up taking a right turn and helping to bring us a chance of some showers later on in the weekend or potentially for Veterans Day? We'll take a look at the scenarios coming up, Ken.
All right, happening now in the WRAL Traffic Center, tracking those foggy conditions. This is a live look at I-40 and Jones Sausage Road. You can barely make out the traffic down there on I-40 this morning. Over in Durham, similarly, Bull City socked in, I-885 TW Alexander Drive. Word of caution, you're listening to us on the radio, make sure your headlights are on in these foggy conditions. That will be a safe thing to do. Listen, let's take you around and show you exactly what's going on in terms of what we're seeing elsewhere in the Triangle and surrounding communities with many of these areas. We can see right now the fog is showing up in all the viewing area this morning. Just a couple of things, really, as we isolate the Beltline. You can see the northern loop of the Beltline. You're looking at a little bit of a slowdown there. That's a huge road that we see this morning, made even more challenging this morning as a result of the foggy conditions. Similarly, US 1, Capitol Boulevard, coming in from Wake Forest. I just checked the census this morning. That's going to be 8 minutes just to get to the capital city this morning. These two incidents on Wake Forest Road, Lake Boone Trail, really not causing any problems for you this morning. If you're heading out this morning, tune us in on the radio because things are constantly changing. 101.5 HD3, you can listen to us anywhere in the Triangle.
Polls are open all across North Carolina. The nation will be watching who wins here. And we are one of 7 battleground states that are critical in the race for the White House, where you are looking live this morning. The final poll data from realclearpolling.com, which averages dozens of polls, including our WRAL News poll. It shows how close the race is in North Carolina. Former President Donald Trump has a polling advantage of just over 1 point over Vice President Kamala Harris. WRAL's Heidi Kirk is at the John M. Brown Community Center in Apex. And Heidi, both candidates ramped up campaigning in North Carolina leading up to today.
You got that right. It's obvious that they know that those margins are extremely close. I want to give you a live look back here at the polling center that we're at, though. Come with me this way. You're going to see people going in and out. We've been seeing this for the last few hours now. In fact, the first people were out here as early as 5:30 this morning getting ready to cast their ballot as soon as the doors opened around 6:30. And as you mentioned, both presidential candidates have been refocusing here in North Carolina over the last week or so and taking part in in a battleground blitz in North Carolina yesterday. Now, former President Donald Trump made a stop at Dorton Arena yesterday morning, focusing on issues like immigration, the economy, and proposing a plan to impose a 25% tariff on all goods from Mexico if the country's president doesn't help curb the flow of immigrants. Meanwhile, First Lady Jill Biden made several stops on behalf of the CARES campaign across North Carolina, including in Carrboro and Durham. Now, Vice President Kamala Harris traveled to several battleground states as well, ending her day in Pennsylvania. Both candidates urged voters to make it to the polls today and hit home the issues that they've been preaching throughout this campaign.
It is time for a new generation of leadership in America. So Pittsburgh, listen, we got one day left to get this done. So now we work to get out the vote.
So in conclusion, with your vote tomorrow, we're going to fire Kamala, we're going to save America, and we're going to cut your taxes, end inflation, slash your prices, raise your wages, and bring thousands of factories back to America and back to North Carolina.
Now, former President Donald Trump did win the state of North Carolina in the last two elections, so he's just trying to hang on while Vice President Kamala Harris is trying to flip this state. I will say that at this particular polling location, people have been in and out fairly quickly. It's been a fairly smooth morning, at least from our end of things. So far, we'll continue to bring you live updates throughout the morning. Heidi Kirk, WRAL News, live in Apex.
And we're also keeping a close eye on the race for North Carolina's next governor, Attorney General Josh Stein or Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson. WRAL's Kelsey Coffey joins us live from the Chavis Community Center in Raleigh. And Kelsey, polling data shows Stein has a big lead over Robinson heading into Election Day.
Yes, Chris, Election Day in full swing here at the Chavis Community Center. So you see that there's some folks here campaigning outside of the building. And then if you know anything about this polling location, you know that people will vote on the second floor. So we'll try to give you as close of a look as we can through the window there of people voting inside. The energy is up here. They have music playing to try to get voters excited as they are casting their ballot. But let's give you a breakdown of where we are right now in the governor's race. Results from our WRAL News poll show Attorney General Josh Stein has a double-digit lead. It shows 52% of voters are backing him, while only 37% support Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, and 10% are still undecided. Stein's platform includes supporting reproductive rights and addressing affordable housing. Robinson announced a public safety platform back in August, promising to crack down on drugs and violent crime. Stein and Robinson will both have watch parties tonight in Raleigh. There's already a party that's starting here this morning at the community center. We'll be sure to have crews at both watch parties to keep everyone updated as the results roll in. Kelsey Coffey, WRAL News, live in Raleigh. And you are also voting to decide who will be the next leader of North Carolina's public schools. WRAL's Laura Levine joins us live from the Herbert C. Young Community Center in Cary. And Laura, our newest poll numbers show that this is a very close race here.
Michelle, good morning. There's nearly 2,000 registered voters here at this polling location, and we have seen many of them this morning head through the doors here to cast their ballot. And as you just mentioned, the race to oversee North Carolina's public schools remains extremely tight. According to the latest polling, 42% of likely voters said they supported Republican Michelle Morrow, while 41% said they plan to vote for Democrat Mo Green. Green brought years of experience to the race. He's a former superintendent of Guilford County Schools and was most recently the executive director of the Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation. Now, one big campaign platform for Green focused on public school initiatives. Morrow entered the race as a political outsider who had little experience with education policy. She's a former nurse and a homeschooler. Morrow's background as an outsider and controversial social media posts, including ones calling for the executions of prominent Democrats, has been criticized throughout this race. She's focused on addressing school safety and security throughout her campaign. Now, Morrow is planning to have a campaign party here tonight in Cary. Meanwhile, Democrat Mo Green, he plans to watch the results coming in at his home. Laura Levine, WRAL News, we're live in Cary.
You can count on WRAL for the fastest election results and most comprehensive coverage all night. Starting at 7 p.m., WRAL News and NBC News will partner for results and analysis on local and national races. NBC will be tracking the national picture throughout the night on WRAL. Then be sure to watch our 11 o'clock news for a wrap-up of all the big local races.
For nonstop North Carolina election coverage, you can watch WRAL News, WRAL News Plus, and Fox 50 starting at 7 p.m. We'll have reporters across the state at the candidates' watch parties and live analysis as those results come in. You'll find WRAL News Plus on Spectrum Channel 1257, over the air on Channel 34, and wherever you stream WRAL.
Breaking this morning, the Boeing strike is officially over. 59% of factory workers voted to accept the company's third offer. It includes 38% raise over 4 years, and that includes an immediate 13% raise. Workers will also receive a $12,000 bonus. However, the deal did not restore Boeing's old pension plan. Workers will return to work beginning on Wednesday.
Voting in the western part of our state is now underway weeks after Helene damaged polling sites. How election workers spent the last weeks preparing to ensure every North Carolinian can cast their ballot.
Plus 5 on your side has a warning this morning about Election Day scams. What you need to watch out to make sure your vote counts.
And watch out for some fog this morning. It is starting to dissipate just a little bit. Once we get into the afternoon, we'll see partly cloudy skies and a warm day today with a high of 80 degrees. We do have some rain in our forecast for late Wednesday into Thursday. I'll show you the timeline.
Welcome back on your Tuesday morning time. Now is 8:14 as you look live over Lewisburg this morning. You can see some of that fog still sticking around a lot of us under that dense fog advisory for this morning. Some areas we're starting to clear out a little bit. Meteorologist Elizabeth Gardner has a look around town behind me. You have it there, Raleigh. You still can't see the buildings.
You can't. Normally, if there's no fog, you can see the outline of the skyline there as we look across Dix Park, but still can't see that. But we can start to see some of the bushes there in the distance for sure. And we can see the buildings here in Fayetteville, but you can tell there's still some cloud cover. Same thing in Apex. We're starting to see the fog lift a little bit here and in Chapel Hill. Chapel Hill, courtesy of Top of the Hill Restaurant. So visibility is definitely improving. We consider a quarter of a mile visibility to be fog. We're still seeing that officially in Southern Pines and Fayetteville, as well as Roxborough and South Hill. But a little bit of improvement here, half a mile in Durham and Raleigh, as well as Goldsboro, and 3/4 of a mile in Rocky Mount. So we're getting there slowly. The dense fog advisory for the entire viewing area lasts until 9 a.m. And pretty quickly we'll start to see that fog dissipating, if not right at 9, certainly by 10 or 11 o'clock, depending on where you are. Then partly cloudy for the rest of the day. A good-looking election day. It'll be warm and dry with a high of 80 degrees this afternoon. Tracking our next chance for rain, we have our cold front that's getting closer to the Mississippi. We've been watching that closely for the last several days. A lot of rain along it, some scattered thunderstorms. We're not likely to see storms, but we should see at least some measurable rain out of this, and we definitely need it now. This is 10 a.m. tomorrow with some cloud cover, maybe even a little fog tomorrow morning, and we're dry through the afternoon just like today. But by 11 o'clock to midnight, we begin to see that rain moving in as the cold front moves in and stalls close to us. Thursday morning, we'll likely see some rain that may spread northward during the day. And so Thursday does look like it'll be, on the wetter side for a good bit of the day, looking at about a 40% chance for rain, a small chance Wednesday and again on Saturday. Not looking at a big soaker, but potentially a half of an inch of rain south of Raleigh and a 1/4 of an inch from Raleigh northward. A lot of the heaviest rain will be down into South Carolina and Georgia. Of course, it has been dry lately. Coming up, Chris Michaels is going to take a look at our long-range outlook through the rest of this month, where it still looks like we could be dealing with warmth and potentially some drought. We take a look at Tropical Storm Rafael moving northwest at 13, 60-mile-per-hour winds. Later on today, likely to become a hurricane moving across parts of Cuba. And then it may start to take a little bit of a right turn. We take a look at our potential paths. One of the models brings it here into the Gulf of Mexico and just has it dissipate. Another one pulls it into the Gulf and then potentially makes a right turn closer to North Carolina. And that could potentially bring us some light rain, probably not anything terribly heavy, but that would be maybe Sunday Friday into Monday. Right now we have Monday dry, definitely cooler for the weekend with highs in the low 70s. Monday, a small chance of showers. Of course, Monday is Veterans Day. We'll keep our eye on that potential coming up, Ken.
All right, Elizabeth, happening now in the WRAL Traffic Center. We got some troubled spots. A report made even more troubling because of the foggy conditions that we're seeing. We're seeing a bit of a slowdown there in I-885 heading into the Bull City this morning as we look at the traffic that's heading north and southbound there on I-885. A half hour ago, you couldn't see the traffic, but now the fog is beginning to lift just a little bit, which is really good news. We're getting close to that 9 o'clock hour when we were told that this could really lift out of here. But elsewhere in the Triangle and surrounding communities, you can see that fog is covering the whole area as we isolate the Beltline this morning. We see a bit of a slowdown on the northern loop of the Beltline this morning, those westbound lanes moving away from us. As you can see, I-440 and Capitol Boulevard, that heavy congestion there, and also that fog. Boy, it's really sitting on top of us this morning. If you're listening to us on the radio, make sure your headlights are on just to be on the safe side. And if you are, we do appreciate that. If you're getting ready to head out, you can do the same. 101.5 HD3. You can listen to us anywhere in the Triangle.
Thanks, Ken. The North Carolina Attorney General's office and 5 on Your Side want you to steer clear of scams on this election day. Remember, you cannot vote by text or email. You can only do it in person or by returning a previously requested absentee ballot. Ignore messages offering last-minute absentee ballots, assistance with correcting your ballot for a fee, or rewards for participating in polling calls. The FBI also warns against campaign investment pools promising returns based on election outcomes. And finally, remember that campaign donations are non-refundable.
Because many schools are used for polling places, there is no school in Wake County today. Durham Public Schools and Cumberland County Schools will have staff work days today.
Election workers say they have been working overtime after Helene to make sure everything is in order as people head to the polls this morning. Buncombe County's elections director says they had to send out new absentee ballots after some people lost their homes. They also had to come up with new plans for early voting and election day. Polling places had to be moved for a variety of reasons. Some became emergency relief sites and others were just too badly damaged. WRAL has a crew in Western North Carolina covering Election Day in that part of the state.
And Jeff Hogan at the WRAL Live Center. We also have access to a lot of cameras all around the country showing live polling sites. We take you to Hendersonville, North Carolina right now. This is a live look at an American Legion post there. Looks like it's empty, but there are people inside. I've seen them going in and coming out. It's drips and drabs so far in that part from what we are seeing out of this. But take you out to right now, this is Springfield, Ohio. We have a look. This camera has been moving around, but people, you can see, inserting a ballot right there on the spot. Also happening as we head just out west. Let's go to El Paso, Texas, for instance, because some of the places out west, these are looks at ballot boxes. A whole bunch of different cameras set up on ballot boxes here. You know, they had that trouble in the state of Washington with somebody setting a couple of them on fire there. But I take it to Denton, Texas now. This is a suburb just north of Dallas. A live look in some of the various hallways. Tabulation room camera right there, and another look at records room there. And all the way out west, you go to Los Angeles, you see that they are not yet open for operation on the West Coast yet.
Yeah, a lot of different viewpoints from that today. Thank you, Jeff. Choppy trading at first, but slight gains by the end of the year. That's the forecast for stocks based on the last 11 presidential elections going back to 1980. The day after the election, the S&P 500 has dropped as much as 5%. That was in 2008. And the S&P has gained 2% twice in 1980 and 2020. But by the end of a presidential election year, the index was up 1.5% on average.
Well, it'll feel like September at times this week. Meteorologist Chris Michaels takes us beyond the phone apps and 7-day forecast to see if there's any sign of a cold spell or some much needed rain. Chris, we need that rain.
Yeah, we do need some rain, and especially I started listening to Christmas music already. It's a little tough to do that when it's 80 degrees outside. But yeah, this is kind of the trend, right? On average, the first fall freeze happening later and later over the past 5-10 years. It happens in the second week of November. In fact, the latest on record within the last 80 years. That was set back in 2009 when we hit 32 for the first time in the fall at the end of November. We could rival that this year when you look at the long-range outlook. High pressure over the eastern U.S., it typically means sinking air, typically means a warm-up. That's what we see over the next 3 to 4 weeks. It's also been very dry ever since Helene, right? Before that, we had more than a foot of rain over 40 days. The 40 days since Helene, only a half an inch of rain. And it looks like that area of high pressure would promote drier weather, too, across the eastern U.S. So you're looking at drought potentially setting in parts of North Carolina. Right now on WRAL.com, I'm walking you through the wildfire potential as we go through the rest of fall.
Yeah, a lot of useful information. Thank you, Chris. Another part of Oklahoma dealt with destruction a day after tornadoes in Oklahoma City. And Wagner, which is near Tulsa, strong winds from yesterday's storm ripped the bricks from a historic building. First responders were called to down power lines and parts of town. No one was injured there, but in nearby Sperry, construction on a church was almost finished when the storm came through and ripped away the roof. At least one person was injured there.
Well, this election day, security will be beefed up at the polls. How local leaders are working to make sure you're safe when you cast your ballot today.
All eyes are on North Carolina as this swing state is crucial in the race for the White House. We'll talk about both campaigns' final push to voters.
As you get into your car, tune to WRAL News Plus on your radio. In Raleigh on 99.3 FM. In Durham, 96.5 FM. And everywhere on 101.5 HD3.
Good morning. Happy Tuesday. Happy Election Day. Time now is 8:26. I'm Michelle McConaughey. We are dealing with a lot of fog this morning. Meteorologist Elizabeth Gardner has a look around town.
Take a look at these 3 cameras, especially Durham. We're trying to look across the DBAP, but you really can't see the other side there. It's a warm start everywhere. 60 in Durham and Raleigh, is 60 in Fayetteville. The fog is still pretty thick here in Raleigh, but we can now see the buildings here in Fayetteville after we had trouble seeing those a little earlier. So very, very slowly, we're beginning to see some small improvements in a few places. But the dense fog advisory is in effect for the entire viewing area until 9 a.m. Still looking at quarter-mile visibility in Southern Pines and Fayetteville, as well as Roxborough and South Hill below that quarter-mile threshold. Checking our planner, expect partly cloudy skies by lunchtime. Near record highs this afternoon for voters, though, near 80, Ken.
Elizabeth, we are tracking those foggy conditions here in the WRAL Traffic Center. Take a look at this live traffic cam of I-40 and Capitol Boulevard. You can barely make out the westbound lanes as they move away from us this morning. I would strongly encourage you to leave the house a little sooner than usual this morning as we take a live look at our traffic sensors this morning. You can see all the fog that just blanketed the entire viewing area. Just got word of a crash on I-40 westbound near Rock Quarry Road. I'll have an update on how that's going to affect your morning commute coming up at the bottom of the hour over in Fox 50.
Thanks, Ken. The polls are open, and there's a few things that you should know before you vote. Polls are open until 7:30 tonight. You can find your polling place and a sample ballot using the voter search tool on ncsbe.gov. Bring your photo ID to the polls, and if you are not registered, you cannot register today, with few exceptions. Next on Fox 50, we have team coverage at the polls on the key races this election day. And next on Today, a first peek at holiday toys.
Shot in 4K ultra high definition. Your number one source for local news. WRAL News. Coverage you can count on.
Now on Fox 50, polls are open and voters are already casting their ballots across North Carolina. We have team coverage of the key races this election day as you help decide who will lead our country and state.
Starting off this morning, we're dealing with foggy conditions, but gradually it is starting to improve. I'll show you what it will look like as you head out the door.
And keeping you safe while you cast your ballot is a top priority. What leaders are doing to keep you and election workers safe as they count your vote. Good morning on this Election Day Tuesday. Thanks for joining us. I'm Michelle McConaughey.
And I'm Chris Lovingood. We have a lot going on here today. Of course, WRAL is your election source for everything you need to know. We have team coverage there. We have Kelsey, we have Laura, we have Heidi, our team of reporters. They're at the polls right now as the doors open. But before we check with them, let's get in check with Elizabeth. She is looking at the fog that it's across our area.
Dense fog advisory for the entire viewing area until 9 a.m. So that's only 30 minutes from now. And you may look around and say, wow, it's still pretty foggy out there. But we do often see fog developing quickly and dissipating quickly. So it may be that just in 30 minutes, we're seeing a good bit better visibility. But you know, we're able to see the building there at Terminal 2. You can just tell there's a lot of low cloud cover that's lingering around the airport. And that's a similar scene across our area right now. It is 60 degrees at RDU with a dew point of 58. So it's warm and it's a pretty saturated air mass as well. Once the fog breaks up in the next hour to 2 hours, we'll see partly cloudy skies for the rest of the day today, and temperatures right around 80 degrees, which is awfully close to a record high. But it will be nice and quiet for the rest of the day for elections. Tracking Rafael, winds at 60 miles per hour, likely to become a Category 1 hurricane later on today, and then potentially weakening slightly here in the Gulf. Potentially over the weekend, it swings northward, bringing some rain to parts of the Gulf of Mexico, and possibly to us. That piece of the puzzle still uncertain, but I'll show you where some of the models send it. Coming up, Ken.
Hi, Elizabeth. Happening now in the WRAL Traffic Center. Of course, we're monitoring the foggy conditions, as you can see from our live traffic sensors this morning. This crash just happened in the last 10, 15 minutes or so on I-40 westbound near Rock Quarry Road, not far from the I-40-440 split there in southeast Raleigh. Right now, we're seeing a little bit of a slowdown around that split. Nothing so really to write home about in terms of the immediate crash site. And look at this. I-40 and Rock Quarry Road, you can barely make out the traffic there. So it changes so quickly. 5 minutes ago, I could see the traffic. Now you can hardly see any traffic there, but I promise you it's there. So make sure you're leaving the house a little sooner than usual this morning. We're also monitoring this disabled vehicle on Glenwood Avenue and eastbound Glenwood Avenue near Lumley Road. I know many of you use Lumley Road as an airport destination, not causing any problems for you this morning, so nothing to worry about. As we isolate the Beltline, traffic is really thinned down in that northern loop of the Beltline, those westbound lanes of I-40 and Capitol Boulevard, as we can see from this live traffic camera, but you're still seeing those foggy conditions this morning. Listen, if you're getting ready to head out, these foggy conditions change so quickly. Tune us in on the radio. We'll keep you updated. You can listen to us anywhere in the Triangle at 101.5 HD3.
Right now, polls are open for the election. North Carolina is an extremely important state in the race for the White House. The final data that we're going to show you is from realclearpolling.com. It averages dozens of polls, including our WRAL News poll. The data shows former President Donald Trump with a polling advantage in North Carolina of just more than 1 point over Vice President Kamala Harris. Let's go to WRAL's Heidi Kirk. She is at the John M. Brown Community Center in Apex. Heidi, we've seen people coming and going there all morning long.
Chris, good morning. It has been a busy morning here at this polling site so far. In fact, I'm going to take you this way. Let's go check out the line in here. Earlier this morning, we saw lots of people lined up outside, but right now it actually looks like there is no line. I'm taking a little peek inside those windows. It is all cleared out, but as you mentioned, there's been lots of people coming and going all morning long. And as you mentioned, the presidential candidates have been making North Carolina a big focus so far this election season. Now, former President Donald Trump made a stop at Dorton Arena yesterday morning as part of that Election Day blitz. Now, he focused on issues like immigration, the economy, and a proposed plan to impose a 25% tariff on all goods from Mexico if the country's president doesn't help curb the flow of immigrants. Meanwhile, First Lady Jill Biden made several stops on behalf of the Harris campaign in North Carolina, including in Carrboro and Durham. Now, Vice President Kamala Harris traveled to several battleground states as well, ending her day in Pennsylvania. Now, both candidates urged voters to make it to the polls on election today and hit home the issues that they've been preaching throughout this campaign.
November 5th, 2024 will be Liberation Day in America. On day one, I will launch the largest deportation program of criminals in the history of our country.
It is a fight for freedom, like the fundamental freedom of a woman to make decisions about her own body.
Now, it's worth noting that former President Donald Trump did win the state of North Carolina in the last 2 elections, and he's hoping to hang on to it while the vice president is looking to turn the tables here. And of course, we're going to continue bringing you live updates from this polling location all morning long. So far, voters who've been in and out say it's been lickety-split super fast, and we'll continue to bring you updates throughout the morning. Heidi Kirk, WRAL News, live in Apex.
And the race for North Carolina governor has also gotten a lot of attention nationally. WRAL's Kelsey Coffey is outside the Chavis Community Center in Raleigh. And Kelsey, polls show that Mark Robinson has a significant gap he needs to close to beat Josh Stein.
Yes, Michelle, and we've seen voters arriving here at the Chavis Community Center. There's people out here campaigning. And then if you know anything about this polling location, people vote on the second floor. So we may be able to zoom up there so you can see people who are voting inside. But there's definitely a lot of energy out here this morning. They have a DJ, music is playing. They want people to be excited about voting. But let's get to more information about the governor's race. Results from our WRAL News poll show Attorney General Josh Stein has a double-digit lead. It shows 52% of voters are backing him, while only 37% support Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, and 10% are still undecided. Stein's platform includes supporting reproductive rights and addressing affordable housing. Robinson announced a public safety platform back in August, promising to crack down on drugs and violent crime. Stein and Robinson will both have watch parties tonight in Raleigh. There's already really a party going on here this morning at the community center, but we'll be sure to keep you updated on the results as they roll in, and we'll have crews at both of those watch parties tonight. Kelsey Coffey, WRAL News, live in Raleigh.
And another high-profile race will decide who leads North Carolina's public schools. You will decide who will be the state's next superintendent of schools. WRAL's Laura Levine is at the Herbert C. Young Community Center in Cary. And Laura, the race between Michelle Morrow and Mo Green, it's very close.
Chris, good morning. We have seen a nice and steady pace of voters come here this morning. Exactly when the polls opened at 6:30, that's when we saw the first line of people. And as you just mentioned, the race to oversee North Carolina's public schools remains extremely tight. According to the latest WRAL News poll, 42% of likely voters said they supported Republican Michelle Morrow, while 41% said they plan to vote for Democrat Mo Green. Green brought years of experience to the race. He's a former superintendent of Guilford County Schools and was most recently the executive director of the Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation. One big campaign platform for Green focused on public school initiatives. Meanwhile, Morrow entered the race as a political outsider who had little experience with the education policy. She's a former nurse and a homeschooler, and she believes that is a great asset to this. Now, we know Morrow's background as an outsider and controversial social media posts, including ones calling for the executions of prominent Democrats, has been criticized throughout this race. She has focused on addressing school safety and security, especially throughout her campaign. Now, Morrow is planning to have a campaign watch party tonight here in Cary. Meanwhile, Democrat Mo Green, he plans to watch the results coming in at his home. Laura Levine, WRAL News. We're live in Cary.
So here's what you need to know before you go to your polling place today. Polls are open. They opened at 6:30 this morning. They are open until 7:30 tonight. You can find your polling place and a sample ballot using the voter search tool at ncsbe.gov. Bring your photo ID to the polls. Don't forget that. And if you are not registered, you cannot register today. The only exceptions are people who just became eligible to vote after the deadline, which was October 11th. You can drop off your absentee ballot in person today at your county's Board of Elections office.
The North Carolina Board of Elections says it will do all it can to keep everyone safe at the polls and as votes are counted. So far, the state says there have been only a few cases of intimidation or harassment at polling places. State Board of Elections Director Karen Brinson Bell has a warning, though. It is a crime to interfere with the duties of election officials. Wake County Sheriff Willie Rose says that he is adjusting his deputies' schedules for the day to protect the counting process.
We're modifying our shifts so that during the hours of operation, as well as late into the evening when the tabulation process will be ongoing.
The state is also increasing security measures at local boards of elections. That includes thorough safety assessments and the installation of features including panic buttons. Folks, a reminder, the fastest, most complete election results will be at your fingertips with the WRAL News app. See that QR code right there? Go ahead and scan that to download the app. The WRAL News app will provide interactive, up-to-the-minute results from more than 400 races across the state. And you can see the running count for races on your ballot, in your county, or nationwide. Just make sure you check that your settings have the notifications turned on so you can be notified.
The FDA is announcing another recall because of listeria concerns. Which brand of cheese is being recalled and where you can get it?
Plus, the city of Raleigh is encouraging people to get out and vote. We'll talk about how they're making sure that you can get to the polls to make sure your voice is heard.
And here's a live look at North Hills this morning. A very foggy start on this election day morning. Meteorologist Elizabeth Gardner is back after the break to tell us when it'll clear and if there's a chance of rain in our future.
Could you imagine trying to play baseball and this as we're giving you a live look at the DBAP in Durham? Fog everywhere. That's really the story of this morning. There limited visibility, and of course Elizabeth Gardner has been tracking that. You can't really see a lot of places across our area today, Elizabeth.
Let's take a look here at what's happening up above. So this is our tall tower camera in East Wake County, and you can start to see those clouds thinning out a little bit. You see where it looks a little bit darker. That's where we're thinning a bit. So once we start to see the thinning, it tends to go pretty quickly. So hopefully we'll start to see this really becoming a little more rapid in terms of our clearing. Also, look at the top of the screen. You see where it's blue? That's just blue sky right above. So once we start to see these clouds thinning out, we'll see mostly sunny to partly cloudy skies this afternoon. A really warm day, though, 60 right now. Our dew point's 58, which with a high of around 80 is on the comfortable side, but it's not as dry as it has been at least a couple of weeks ago. What we're looking at with visibility for fog is a quarter of a mile or less. We're seeing that still in Southern Pines and Fayetteville, as well as Roxborough and South Hill, but some minor improvement in some other places, especially south and east of I-95. We'll widen out the view a bit. Here comes our next front. It's going to bring us some rain tomorrow night and Thursday. There's been some strong thunderstorms, some severe weather with this, but we're not likely to see that. Tomorrow morning, we'll likely wake up to what we're seeing this morning. Some patchy fog, some low cloud cover, maybe even a little bit of drizzle as that front gets closer to us. But the bulk of the day will be dry. Once we get to around 11 o'clock, we begin to see the rain pushing through. This is 8 a.m. on Thursday morning, and we'll continue to see some waves of rain through the afternoon as well. So it's looking a little bit wetter for us on Thursday. At one point, it looked like it might just be in the morning, and now, at least on this version of Futurecast, it's for more of the day. But no rain today. We'll see a pleasant day. Temperatures by lunchtime, 74, 80 degrees at 3 o'clock. If you're catching those last votes in the evening, we're looking at low 70s. And this is going to be one of the warmest election days on this date anyway. Our forecast high 80 degrees, the record high 81 back in 2004. Another warm up continues not just today, but tomorrow and Thursday. All three of those days are not far from record highs. The normal high temperature is 67 this time of year, and we really haven't been close to that in a bit, and certainly not this week. Our normal low is a chilly 43, but we'll be in the 60s all the way through Friday, and then even after that, it's pretty warm. No need for a jacket for the next 3 mornings. Our average high is 67. Thursday morning's low is 65. So these temperatures are way off kilter. But Thursday's front will bring us some rain, anywhere from maybe a quarter of an inch to 3/4 of an inch as an average. And then behind it, we do cool down Saturday and Sunday. We'll be watching the tropics to see if we end up with a slight chance of a shower from Monday for Veterans Day. All right, thanks, Elizabeth. We are working to learn more this morning about a person who was hit and killed in a Fayetteville crash. Police say the person was hit yesterday at the intersection of Rayford Road and Revere Street. That person later died at Cape Fear Valley Medical Center. We are making calls to learn the name of the person who died and whether anyone is facing any charges.
Today, millions of new voters will get the chance to cast their first ballots for president. As Ted Lindner reports, many people say their involvement through the election cycle has bolstered their energy.
The finish line is almost in sight. And as the race for the White House enters its final stretch,
the only thing I want is get out and vote. Just get out, finish it.
Each candidate is using all their remaining time to convince Americans they're worthy of their vote.
Are we ready to do this? We're ready to get out the vote.
This presidential election will mark the first time millions of newly registered voters will be able to cast a ballot. Many are expressing excitement over participating in a democratic process that allows their voices to be heard.
This is my first rally ever. I am a first-time voter, so it was really, really nice. Some tears were shed. I'm really excited to vote.
21-year-old Alondra Cortez went to Vice President Kamala Harris's rally in Allentown, Pennsylvania on Monday. She said the experience was inspirational.
This rally, she just said a lot of things that you really have to take into account as a college student, as a first generation, as a Puerto Rican.
Meanwhile, in Alamo, Texas, another first-time voter story highlights the passion driving people to the polls.
Well, one thing is very important. This country is one of immigrants.
After living in the U.S. for roughly 40 years, 78-year-old Carlos Salas said he was fueled to finally, quote, wake up his civic duties.
This beautiful country has opened doors for me.
Salas, originally from Mexico, recently became a U.S. citizen, so he could vote on the matters important to him in his community.
Now, I've exercised my vote. I've exercised my right. If what I voted for happens, that's good. And if it doesn't happen, there's no reason to get angry.
That was Ted Lindner reporting. Nearly 4.5 million people have already voted in North Carolina. Folks, that's about 57% of the state's registered voters. Unaffiliated voters outnumber Republicans and Democrats in the state, but they usually turn out a lower rate. 1.48 million Republicans have voted compared to 1.44 million Democrats.
The nation will be watching who wins North Carolina's 16 electoral votes. It's one of only 7 toss-up states that will essentially determine the next president. Trump won the state in 2016. In 2020, he won by fewer than 75,000 votes. North Carolina has not voted for a Democrat for president since 2008.
Just a heads up, if you need a ride to the polls today, well, the city of Raleigh has you covered. Charges for city buses are waived today. That means you ride free. The city hopes this will encourage people to get out and vote.
The mother of a 7-year-old boy who was killed in a drive-by shooting in Fayetteville is reacting to a recent arrest in the case. 19-year-old Sierra Chambers was arrested and charged with accessory after the fact. Court papers show that she's accused of hitting the car that was used in that shooting. In an exclusive interview, Zion's mother tells WRAL she hopes this arrest leads to the murder suspects.
I'm praying and I'm hoping that with them having her arrested, that comes out. That she talks and she tells what really happened.
Chambers was released from the Cumberland County Detention Center yesterday on a $100,000 bond.
Elon Musk's America PAC will give out one last $1 million prize to a voter today. A Pennsylvania judge declined an effort yesterday to stop the PAC from giving out prizes. Voters who signed a political pledge in swing states are eligible. Philadelphia's DA sued Musk and the PAC last month. They argued the giveaway was an illegal lottery, but Musk's lawyers defended the effort as free speech.
A U.S. soldier who was critically injured over the summer while on the Gaza Pier mission has died. The Army confirms 23-year-old Sergeant Quandarius Stanley died last Thursday. He was injured in May while on a mission to deliver humanitarian aid to Gaza. It is not known exactly how Stanley was injured, but the military says it was not combat related. The other troops, 2 other troops who were also hurt, only received minor injuries.
Folks, I would definitely check your fridge. An American cheese company is pulling some of its brie from store shelves. It's because of a listeria contamination concerns. The FDA says Savencia Cheese USA recalled 6 different kinds of brie cheeses, and they were sold in Aldi stores. If you bought any of them, you can return them to the store for a full refund. At last check, there are no reports of illnesses or deaths.
Meta is keeping its ban on a new political ad through Election Day. The company says it'll continue to restrict new ads on Facebook and Instagram past today. Ads that were on the sites before October 29th will stay up. The extension comes as they try to battle misinformation claims during this election season. Meta has not announced when it will end the restriction. Well, in a tradition that goes back decades, the first votes on Election Day were cast just after midnight in Dixville Notch, New Hampshire. The township is home to 13 people. 6 are registered to vote. 3 each voted for Kamala Harris and Donald Trump.
Krispy Kreme wants to make Election Day sweet for voters. The company says you can get a free donut today and a special I voted sticker. Now, you don't actually have to show proof that you voted to get this deal.
Kelly Clarkson will once again host this year's tree lighting ceremony in New York's Rockefeller Center. Clarkson made the announcement yesterday on her show. She also teased the event, saying it will have the best music, star-studded surprises, and of course, the lighting of the Christmas tree. Clarkson herself has yet to announce if she will be performing again. You can watch it on December 4th on WRAL.
Your time right now is 8:53. We get you a look here of your winning lottery numbers just in case you missed them. Of course, we'll get you another check on weather and traffic just in a bit.